Good morning, everybody. Slightly chilly, but we got stuff to do today. First order of business, get this old fireplace fired up. So we got a little bit of heat going in here. Realistically, the heat's kind of, just for everything in here not to collect a bunch of moisture, because once it starts sanding, she's going to get hot. But then once you stop sanding, you're going to be sweated, then you get cold again. So it's a vicious cycle. Bottom line is, we need some heat. Let's get it. You guys ready to be caught up to speed? There's hasn't been a ton of hours in the sanding of the high build, but I'm going to show you guys just the amount of detail that goes into one of these older bodies. I'm going to show you the charger, and I'm going to show you basically what the high build, overcomes. First and foremost, there's just a lot of detail. I think this might have been arguably the end of the era for just hardcore detail. And this truck, compared to some, doesn't have a lot of body shape and just different levels and everything. But if you look at that versus the Charger's got a lot of flat paneling to it, a lot. And this one's got the swept line. It's got a big old bulge on the fenders, which is sweet. Then the hood's got ribs going that way. They're everywhere. But I'll show you on the bed here, because this one's still untouched with the high build, what it's covering up. You see all these little low spots and stuff like that? I'll go through and scuff this whole thing, try to smooth it out and get rid of some of that little stuff. But you look in here, I might readdress this. I'm fairly confident the high build can handle stuff like that. That was flux core filling in welds from hooks that were on the side of this bed. Thought about leaving them on there, but man, it looks so much smoother without them. Some down here, but you can shoot this whole thing, cover that up. There's even two right there that I filled in. Those ones I'll need to take down a little bit more, because they are actually sticking up. I can feel those. And those will be a high spot, and that high spots are hard to get rid of, because you have to make the whole side high to cover that up. This fender here, it's got a couple Bondo high spots on it. Running that block across there, trying to come into here, smooth this out. There's actually a little bit of a gutter that started here. The difference between the Bondo fading in and the actual fender, so it might work that just a little bit more. But there was a lot of reconstruction to this fender. Arguably should have just swapped that thing out, but that's just the way she goes sometimes. I didn't have a spare, couldn't find a good donor spare, and did buy another truck, but the driver's fender was in good shape, but not that one. So that's just what happens. Couple spots went pretty thin. If I show just a little bit of steel, I stop right there, because that's as far as I'm going to go with it. This door right here, the gun actually clogged the tip and sprayed nasty all over it. And not to mention, I did find a pouch of dirt got all over it. So I just laid her on thick, and to get through the rough cut down to the smooth of this door, ended up showing a little bit more steel, which is fine. I didn't actually go all the way through it. This whole rig's going to get another coat. Ideally, you wouldn't need another coat, but it's not going to be high build if I can get away with it. I'm going to just go with the regular primer, correct the metal and other primer, Bondo kind of material, and that will be hope in the last stage. But she's actually smoothing up very well. Both the front doors, those cleaned up pretty good, all things considering, because those had a ton of hammer dolly work. All things considering, the doors came out really well, considering how much I had to pull out on the bottoms of them. Hammer dolly work. They don't have a ton of Bondo in it, but just, a good distributed layer on there just to blend it all together. But I'm going to show you guys just the details in this right here. I normally wear a mask for this, but try to talk to you. So I'm waiting on the sticky stuff that goes on these bigger blocks, so I can run an even longer one, which would be ideal on cars like the Charger. But I'm just wrapping it up old school. And these I can really hammer out on the doors not bad at all. You can cover some ground quick, but you gotta continuously clean out your paper because it dirties up quick, just clogs. Then I got this little guy for smaller areas. It's a little bit easier to maneuver, so I'll be able to do my areas right there, and you can hear how this whole side just kind of got bad luck on because it's so thick. But luckily this fender is in good shape underneath, so it doesn't take a ton of equalizing with these blocks. And then this one here, pretty much the same idea exactly, but it's just a piece of foam from shipping, and that's what's helped me get into spots like this right here. Because if you go through with just your finger, you end up having a trench right there from your finger, or your whole hand, or your palm, or something like that. You end up just with a bad spot. And trying to keep it smooth, these blocks really help. So I can, distort this one and get up in there. And I'm still trying to work, like over here, you go in these kind of patterns. And I'm still trying to do that right here, so that I don't have a continuous wear spot. Pretty much consider it like if you were to go up to it with a grinder and go rant right there, you just have a really deep gouge. But if you just went whoop over the top of it, then you'd have an equal pass, theoretically-ish. Pressure, math, and everything gets played in. But right here, hit it with that guide coat, and that thing will show you all your low spots because the black paint gets hit last. All that stuff that fell into little craters. And this takes a lot of patience right here, because you think, oh, just get in a hurry and just start hammering, and then you hit your corners, which is fine. We're going to go back over it, but nevertheless, you don't want to have to make more work for yourself. And one thing that I'm really learning here, especially in these first couple passes, that you see all the Bondo in a can, the high build primer, you see it just falling off there. That's why you got to wear a mask. It'll just start clogging you up, especially if you're working in a small spot. It'll hit that one spot really thick on your paper, and then you're pretty much just running a silky smooth section on there that's not doing anything for sanding properties. Already did the top there. This fender turned out really well. I think back in here it needs a little bit. Seen a lot of guys, if you're good and you spend even more hours on the bodywork beforehand, this high build going back through it will just do those little correction areas that aren't really worth your time to go back through and massage out, just those little dimples. But I'll tell you what, the more time you spend on your prep work and all your body work before you start doing this stuff, it's going to speed it up. But this high build's kind of putting in a prayer on the backside just to do your thing, clean it up, and hopefully she does a job. But I don't want to push too hard because then you'll break through your pressure. Trying to keep that equal pressure on the whole thing. Arguably, I probably should have done the charger before I did this one because I'd have that experience of sanding it out, but starting with the hard one, then we'll go to the charger. Charger should be a freaking walk in the park compared to this old girl. Man. You guys see this line right here? There's actually a little bit of Bondo in the gutter kind of a deal, and then right in here. It was something I didn't notice till right there at the very end, but I Bondoed her, kind of faded her out a little bit. So that right there is telling me how far I've got to sand into it, and that's where the high build's going to hopefully save me, because that's going to layer somewhat equal all over the top, and we're just going to work our little pattern here. Come on, block. Stay with me. So we just got to get rid of that guide coat in the center. It's a pretty good little gutter. But it's actually came out pretty sweet in some of these spots. Some of the stuff that I was like, oh, it did pretty well right there. But look at that. Immediately where my finger's kind of pushing, Starting to work it, but I don't want to take my corner off, so I gotta be careful. I haven't done this area over here, so I'm not too worried about getting aggressive in the corner. I gotta fade that out that way anyway. But look at immediately. Those guys off. Almost. Another pass. Another blast. This is with my cheap one. The other rig, that was pretty good, but it doesn't have enough flex to really get in the spots like that, so I worry that point right there is just gonna hurt me in the end. So, like this little cheap one, just for doing these spots. Get the double feature. You see how that stuff's coming off? Whoa, it's close. But again, like I was talking about, this thing just having nice and flat up here. But then, even when I was feeling that fresh fender on a truck that I got outside now, it's almost got a little roll right before it hits the flare. So that is, I can see the shadow on it and everything, so that'll be noticeable obviously when you get paint on it. So I'm going to give her a little bit more, but I don't want to go too much, because theory with this truck is it's not going to be that $300,000 rig, but it'll be a really nice driver, that's for sure. Little areas make a difference right here. So it's fading her a little bit now that I'm almost where I want to be. Man, that's not bad. Shadow of possible metal under there, so I'm just getting back to structure anyway. Yeah, it wasn't much right there. It was a little dinger. I just need to have a little reconstructive surgery right on the lip. I brought it out a lot. Yeah. Now it's coming around. I'm liking this fender a lot. It came. Oh, what is that? What in the devil? At the end of this video, I'll go over all the imperfections that are still on the cab that didn't get covered. Shoot. Something in the paint. Well, I'd say I'm turning over a new leaf on this project, because every single day I come out here, I learn something new, and I go one step farther than I ever planned on the day before, as far as just the detail work I'm trying to put into this, finish cut, and everything. Originally, when I put down the high build, I was like, well, I'm just going to scrape her smooth and it'll be ready for paint. That's not what happened. Long block brought up a couple things, so I just kept going through it. Areas that had Bondo, smoothed those out a little bit more, but key areas that I was really relying on the high build to take care of, I'm actually pretty excited to say they did the job, because some areas were just plain too small for the normal Bondo to take care of. Yeah, you can put the thin Bondo on there, but I wanted to see what the high build would do. And there's one spot in particular that I'm absolutely surprised at how well the high build delivered. So I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of the truck. It's not final, like high build done sanded. I got to go through and hit a lot of the small areas, but for the most part, I mean, she's close enough to show you guys. All the big areas are done, the key areas that you're going to see when you walk up to the truck. We'll start with the driver's side, because that's by far the better side. And honestly, that was overall the worst side when I first started this, because the doors are super damaged. The fender was pretty good, but the doors were pretty heavily just beat in, multiple drill holes and everything. So I don't know how many hours I have just sanding on this thing, but I got really dry hands. This stuff's like working with concrete. You know what I'm talking about. Let's get it. I ripped my pants. Now, like I was saying earlier, it's hard to tell where these fenders are actually supposed to be, whatnot. I actually had the front clip was off by about a ½ inch, so I had to adjust that because when I put the hood down, we weren't having it. And there's another spot I had to adjust, but these just details. After a little while, you can't tell until you're there, kind of a deal. But check this out. These were all holes. I think there was one right there. That one really covered up. There was a piece of trim right there. Now, back in the day, they drilled holes, put the trim through with little dowels, and then had this little weird nut that just self-tapped its way onto the dowel. And, I mean, that's flashy. It looks actually cool having that on there, but it needs to have it on the rest of the truck, and since the front clip is different, I had to weld those up. But I put a little bit of Bondo over those, and it just wasn't quite enough to really need the Bondo, so I wanted to see what the high build would do. Now, this side didn't come out as perfect as I was hoping. You can't feel that very much. This one can't feel it at all. Can't feel that one at all. This one, I can't feel that one. So it did good there. Getting sidetracked, taking it along on there. But you saw me sand this one out. You still got a little bit of a shadow there, but it's hard to tell with the angle of the light. But we're not going to get too carried away. By the way, carriage bolts are not supposed to be there. That's how the truck was put together back in the day when they did front clip swap. And I thought it was kind of neat, so I left it. But this, I'll plug in a photo of what this used to look like. It just absolutely mangled. I think they probably had a trial run and put every option of mirror on this Ford truck. They had holes right here, holes up on the top. I'll show you the other side, obviously, where the guide coat's still on it. That needs to be sanded here and here. This thing was all mangled. There's a lot of time spent trying to make that gutter look straight, and I just said, you know what? Whew. Focus on the big key areas and the doors. Just take a look at the doors. This one's, there we go. They shaped up actually pretty freaking well. Now this one, it was a big resurrection on it, and I think it's actually bulged out just a little bit too far, but that's just the way it is. And or this one didn't quite get pulled out far enough. But I'm pretty dang happy with how slick those look. I showed you there the high build came out pretty chunky, so went down pretty thin, but that's fine. Like, it's going to get a whole nother coat of not high build. I'm doing good enough. I do not need to put another high build on there. I'm pretty confident in that. I've spent a little bit of time up on the roof just with the super long block because it's, you know, covering ground. This door, it turned out pretty good. I'd say for the most part, we just got that one little high spot right there, but shoot, ain't gonna worry about that little guy. This, actually, I forgot. I might have mentioned it already, but it was stabbed in, and I polished it out a little bit, but there is so much detail to one of these trucks. I just can't even fathom how many angles and everything. They were going for a record. But that door turned out pretty nice. It's definitely flatter here with just a little taper at the end. It almost looks, I don't know, it's hard to tell with the shadows in the shop here, but it almost looks like there's a little spot right there, but from what that sucker was, she's turning out pretty dang nice. And my experience doing this stuff is zero. Absolutely zero. This turned out pretty good. And right here, that was the same thing, multiple mirrors. And they actually, this is where the high build kicked in really nice, because there's actually some welds right there that filled in, ground down, obviously, but you can't see them. It turned out perfect right there. You can't even feel them. And I believe, yeah, right here is a little bit, but you can kind of see just the markings of it, just kind of peeking through. But the high build went in there, took care of her. And this is where it got a little difficult, because this fender was so far jacked up, it didn't even make sense. And I got a block back there because I don't have any weather stripping, so the door goes metal to metal. So I put the block in there so it stopped doing that. But I had to redirect this fender again, because after I put the high build on it, it was so close to touching, you couldn't even see light in there, but it didn't touch. So a ratchet strap pulled around, maneuvered, re-angled it, and now we got actually an even gap right there, and it made the fender look quite a bit better, because this is supposed to be more or less ish flat, and it had a little sweep to it, which is fine. It looked okay, but it was nice just redirecting that a little bit, and I got lucky and it smoothed it out just a little bit more. I'm pretty happy about that. But there was a spot I was telling you, the high build kind of got a little away from me, and you know, we went through to the Bondo, and this is actually a nice, it's quite a bit smoother. It doesn't have so much of a ripple kind of effect, because like I said, this thing was destroyed, and I had to bring that back around. But right here, check this out. The high build took care of all of them on this side except for one little dot right there, which I'm going to put some of that really thin Bondo in there, and I'll show you a couple other spots that I was aiming to get the right here. So this hood was, I guess you could say it's kind of pitted, but you can't feel that at all. If I would have went down anymore, it would have ruined that. But a couple spots, it kind of gets away from you every once in a while, but you can kind of see right in there some of that slight pitting kind of stuff, and the high build just took care of that. But if you guys ballpark the guess on what I'm painting this rig, I'm aiming to leave these black. I'm going to paint one set black and one set white, just to see how it shakes out, because I'd like to have black in the grill. I want to see how those look. But I'm going to end it here. That was a long little spiel at the end. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in for the second channel. This build is turning out. There was one point I told my old man I think I could be done with this truck in 2 weeks. That was 2 months ago. And I told my buddy today I think I could finish this in 2 months. So that tells you the level of detail I started throwing at this thing, because at one point I was just like, well, just slap some Bondo on there and, you know, cover up a couple little dents and just rattle can it. Kind of a, you know, I wasn't going to go that far low, but to what I'm doing now, I think the bodywork might stand a chance of turning out pretty dang okay. But if you made it this far in the video, say, hey, aren't you missing a couple lug nuts on them wheels? We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Later.